forfeiture, and then just spend a couple of minutes talking about kind of my postgraduate experience and what I've done since I graduated from K-State. So that should leave us hopefully with about 30 minutes or so for kind of a question and answer session. If you have them, of course, if you guys have questions, feel free to ask throughout. Financial auditor. So performance auditing is not financial auditing. So I would say that performance audit is actually more synonymous with program evaluation. So we're looking at an agency or a program and trying to figure out if it's working like it's supposed to, in a nutshell. So kind of there's a general process associated with that, which is to start first with what should be happening. And so we try and identify like a standard, so it might be like a state law or best practice, something like that, and figure out what's supposed to be happening. And then we go out and we review documentation and talk to accomplishing what it's supposed to. And then different types include whether or not an agency or program is operating efficiently, if it complies again with, or maybe like an agency's policies. And then there's also kind of a different type of audit which is more forward-looking, so trying to study what the effect of maybe a policy change might be on a program or an agency. So I thought I would also highlight that there are two different types of performance auditors, internal and external. So internal auditors, they audit, on the other hand, that person is actually not employed by the agency that they're auditing, so they would report back to their customers or shareholders if it's a private company. And they are, I guess the primary responsibility of a performance auditor is really to shine a light on any problems that exist. So they're going to be less involved in actually coming up with the policies or processes to fix it. So they're going to be more general recommendations, and then the details about how that's actually going to work is left up to agency management. But, we are a nonpartisan agency for the campus legislature. So we're located in Topeka, just down the street. We report to a 10-member committee. So it's comprised of both senators and Republicans, both conservative and liberal there. So they actually, this 10-person committee, they actually select the topics that we audit, so they decide on the questions that we're going to try and answer. And then once we actually go and do our work, we then report back to this committee as well. So they're kind of our clearinghouse, and that's the point at which our findings become public information. So one thing I forgot to mention, we are an external audit agency. So because we are a legislative branch agency, we only audit executive branch agencies. And so we don't report to management of, let's say, like the Department of Labor, for example. We would come back and report to this committee. So we also audit a wide variety of topics. So kind of getting more narrowly focused here on what performance audit is. I thought I'd give you guys just a couple of examples of things that I personally have worked on in my time at Post Audit. Most recently, I worked on an audit, and I bet you guys at the back can't even see this. I worked on.
See it, Chris.
Oh, can you? Okay, good. On an audit, on an audit of the state's foster care program. So I thought this has changed over time, and then the third question is that more perspective type question. So asking us a hypothetical. Right now, the state's foster care program is actually carried out by 2 private contractors or nonprofit agencies. And so the question was, if the state continued to have a privatized foster care system, how would the cost compare to if the state actually provided those services directly? So I've also had occasion to audit the state's economic development programs. So again, I've listed a few questions. I'm not going to go through all of them. I've also audited the juvenile correctional complex, which is located in Topeka as well. So those were more safety type of questions. And then the state's machinery and equipment tax exemption, and whether or not property has been evaluated consistently. So with that, I actually wanted to spend time actually talking through this asset seizure and forfeiture audit that I worked on, again, to get a little more detailed, give you guys an idea of what we actually do on a day-to-day basis, I hope, at least. So I actually have a video clip, so it's about 5 minutes long or so, but I think it does a nice job of setting up what asset seizure and forfeiture is, and it's maybe a little more entertaining because it's from John Oliver. So we'll listen to that, and then I'll get back up.
What you kept in the trunk?
He told me to turn on my air vents on high and roll up my windows and get out of the car because he was going to run a canine around it.
Dove didn't find drugs, but he did find the $2,400.
He said, no, I'm going to keep the money because I've concluded through my investigation here that you are traveling from Michigan to California to purchase drugs.
Wow. I mean, there is so much wrong there, including the fact that any policeman who genuinely believes you need to travel from Michigan to California to purchase, it's right there. And the problem is, stories like that are surprisingly common. In fact, since 9/11, under just one program, police have taken $2.5 billion in the course of over 61,000 seizures of cash alone from people who, and this is the mind-blowing part, were not charged with a crime. That is the sort of police behaviour that we laugh at other countries for clackerballs and United States versus approximately 64,695 pounds of shark fins, which must have been an amazing court case. And do you see those shark fins in the room right now? Yes! There they are! There they are! Let the record show the witness is pointed at roughly 65.
That kind of gives you a setup of what civil asset seizure and forfeiture is. There's a couple of things I wanted to just reiterate from the video for you guys and then make specific to Kansas. So each state, their process looks a little bit different, right? So in Kansas, law enforcement agencies, they can take someone's property as long as they suspect that that property was being used to commit a crime. So state law actually lays out a number of crimes that would give rise to seizure. So that includes things like drug trafficking, gambling, human trafficking, forgery. There's a whole list of things, right? And so this is what makes this program so contentious, right, is that the person doesn't actually have to be charged or convicted with a crime. So it's just that they have probable cause to believe that that property was used. So the types of items that officers can take.
Is there a warrant involved, Chris?
They do have to have a warrant in Kansas. So property can include a variety of different things. So what we actually saw during our audit was a lot of times it's cash. So if someone does have, to give an example in the video of someone who's carrying large amounts of cash with them, maybe they're going to purchase a car or something. Maybe it is drug money, who knows, right? But it could also include drugs, guns, it could include anything that that person has on them. So it could be like a watch or a cell phone or a laptop. They can pretty much take any of those items. So the case itself goes through a civil court process, so it's a judge who then is determining whether or not probable cause was established, and then it's that judge who determines if the ownership of that property is going to be awarded to the law enforcement agency or if that property will go back to the person. And so if it's awarded to a law enforcement agency in Kansas, law enforcement agencies get to keep 100% of the proceeds. So if it's cash, deposit it in a specially designated forfeiture fund. If it's, let's say it's a vehicle, for example, then there's a couple of options. So law enforcement agencies can actually keep the vehicle and use it for like department purposes, or they can also put it on auction and sell it, and at which point then they would deposit those proceeds in that same forfeiture fund. So there are some restrictions. State law says, it's pretty vague, that the money out of that forfeiture fund must be spent on special and additional law enforcement purposes.